I'm not sure about that. And there goes my phone ringing, too. So we're going to ignore the phone for just a moment. Well, we want to welcome folks to our broadcast. We do this program with Sheriff Derek Palmer every Friday at the same time, around 11:05 on WKRK. And the camera, by the way, is right here.
Right.
So if you guys want to make eye contact with the camera, like I just did, feel free to do so. And we're just going to have a very informal discussion today. And this is Cindy. So I want to put the camera on Cindy right now. This is her very first time on radio. How about Facebook Live, Cindy? Have you ever been on Facebook Live?
I'm not.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're going to do a great job. Now, you have a program about foster care that is coming up. And good morning, Sheriff. How are you doing?
I'm doing well this morning. Doing fine.
And you brought your lovely wife.
Yeah.
And we're
I
glad
tell
to have
people around the state I know the DSS director pretty well.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and just get with the program and tell folks what's going on. And I'm excited to hear about this foster program.
Well, one of the things this morning as we wanted to have a chance to have Cindy come by and just talk a little bit about the foster care program and the things that they're doing over there to try to get help and try to get help for these kids that are in need. There are a lot of kids in our community that are kind of fall through the cracks and fall by the wayside that general citizens don't think about, and we deal with those a lot in law enforcement and the sheriff's office and the police departments around, and interacting with families through domestic disputes and drugs and a lot of those different things that go on that affects the children. So we wanted to invite Cindy to come by today and let her talk a little bit about the foster care program. And I know she said she only wanted to talk about 5 minutes, but we've got 30, so you can talk as long as you want to.
I think we may be able to stretch it out just a little bit.
We have been known to go over 30 a time or two.
She looks very conversational.
Yeah.
I don't talk near as much as Derek does, so 5 minutes will probably be just fine for me.
Derek says we need more time to do his show.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm here for is that we are getting ready to start a class to train foster parents. So I want to talk a little bit about what's involved in that and try to recruit some good families who are willing to help some children who are in a bad situation. We have currently 59 foster children. We have 20 licensed foster homes right now, but we're getting ready to lose several of those. We have some who are going to retire, who have been with us for a very long time. We also have some who are moving out of the county, and we have some who their homes are full, whether it's through having their own children or adopting some children that have become available through the foster care system. So,
And I think one thing I want to interject just a second. I think one of the things that we might want to let those people that's listening understand is that all these kids that come in foster care, not all of them are from drug homes or those type of things. You know, you have kids that come in the system for different reasons. Sometimes it could be a drugs or could be something as simple as homelessness or a sickness that's in the family or things of that nature. So when they're talking about bringing kids into your home, it's not always from the drug world and those drug addicted babies that are coming in. It could be from different situations. And I think that's important to let the people out there know that, applying for foster care and being foster parents, you're not always bringing a lot of those other kind of things around your home.
that is right. And you can kind of say, I would rather have infants or babies or, under a certain age. We have a real need for people who will foster teenagers. That's a real need that we have as well. So basically, the way the process works is if we receive a report at the agency about some concerns that people may have, and we get reports from all kinds of different sources. But once we receive that report, we initiate an investigation. And if we determine that the children are not safe in their current environment, then we have to talk to a judge, and then we can take a non-secure custody order. Once that happens, we have to find a placement for the children. We like to place with family. That's not always an option. So at that point, we do have to find a foster family or placement for them. The length of stay in foster care can vary depending on the situation. Sometimes it's a few days. Sometimes it's a much longer period of time. And sometimes we end up terminating parental rights and the child becomes available for adoption. So that's another possibility there.
How long does that normally take? I know that's
Ideally,
probably a long process to get to that point.
it is. Ideally, the state would like for us to have permanency for children within 1 year. Unfortunately, with the court system and different things that we have to do to try to reunify the children with their families, a lot of times that does not happen within a year.
Okay, one question I have too is because we live in a unique territory right here on the Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee state line. How does that happen? How does that work when you're having to cross state lines? So maybe a family lives in Tennessee and you're working with North Carolina. Is that an issue or?
It can be an issue, yes. Sometimes we can call the state and just ask if it's like a kinship placement. We can ask that agency to go out and do a home study, a kinship assessment. If it's something that's going to be more long-term, we have to go through what is called ICPC, or Interstate Compact, for the protection of children. That takes a much longer time frame because we have to send so much paperwork through. We have to send it to Raleigh, who then sends it to the capital of whichever state we're working with.
And one of the things we see this a lot too with working with other states with the Department of Social Services is things like when you have a helicopter flight, for example. We had a situation a while back where we had an abused child where we were doing an investigation here in Cherokee County, but the child was flown to Erlanger. And so when you have those issues where a child's in a different state and needs medical care in a different state, and you have those family issues, if a perpetrator may be a family member that we're working investigation here, but they're at the hospital in Tennessee. So they have to work a lot with each other, with the out-of-state departments there to try to make sure the kids are safe, depending on what state they're in and where they're located and things of that nature. You may run across a situation where you have one parent that lives in one state and another parent that lives in another state. So you have to determine that jurisdiction where the child is born or the child lives and those kind of things. And so all those can get pretty complicated, I'm imagining, through the Department of Social
It
Services.
can, yes.
How long have you been with the DSS now?
20 years.
20? You don't even look old enough to be there that long.
We look a lot older, don't we, Tim?
We do, especially with Derek and all this gray
That's
there.
it.
You know.
I started my career actually at the sheriff's office with 911 dispatching,
Oh, really?
and was there for almost 2 years, and then I transferred to DSS, and I've been there ever since. So.
Right. DSS is such an important part of our community. A lot of people don't realize the resources that are available, and what all you do for families that need your services.
Right. And another thing too, DSS is a lot like law enforcement too, in the aspect sometimes you get a bad deal with the public and people say things about you and don't really treat you fairly a lot of times and that kind of stuff. But what people need to understand is that when a report is made to DSS, just like law enforcement, there is a legal obligation of things that you have to do, that you have to follow through with a process. And they could very well get a report that is substantiated that they have to check into and look into. And once the process has started and looking into it, they may not necessarily feel like this is a situation where you need to jerk the child out of the home at this point, but they do have legal obligations of things they have to follow through with the system and all that. And sometimes the people that's out there that's dealing with this may have the attitude the Department of Social Services is just trying to take my kids away from me or just trying to do this, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. And I think that y'all have reunification goals and all those kind of things that's mandated by the state. Is that not correct?
Yes, we do. We are required to work with families to try to reunify them. And that's what we would like to see happen in every situation if possible, because that's just where the children are more comfortable, and that's where they want to be. Even a lot of times when bad things have happened to them in that home, that's still mom and dad.
Right.
So.
And I understand sometimes that a lot of the encouragement is for those bad things for, in the lack of better words, the parents need to get their act together so that those kids can return to their home in a safe environment.
And sometimes that's all they need is a wake-up call. Sometimes we start down a path that we didn't intend to go down, and we wake up one day and we're a lot further down that path than we had planned. So a lot of times that's the situation, and we get involved, and that it kind of wakes them up, and then they can turn things around, and that's what we really desire to see happen. The thing is with the children, who end up being taken into custody is that they've been through a traumatic event with whatever happened at home, plus being removed from everything they know. You know, we show up a lot of times and somebody that they don't know is taking them away from their parents. A lot of times law enforcement is involved.
Right.
We take them to a place and put them in another home where it's also complete strangers. We like to have enough resources here in Cherokee County so that we can at least try to keep those kids in their same school or daycare so that everything isn't changing. So that's why it's very important for us to have the resources in Cherokee County that we can reach out to.
I understand it does have to be pretty traumatic for the child too, because they lack that stability, and especially if they're moving from foster home to foster home to foster home, there's really no permanence there, and that has to take a toll on their emotions.
Yes.
You know, I was sharing with a family here this past week that's going through some issues that I think DSS may be involved in the family, but it's some law enforcement issues they're dealing with. And one of the things I tried to stress to the parents in that situation was that there's no doubt in my mind that you love your children. I think you really do love your children, and you care for your children. You want your children to be home with you. But I think you need to realize what your actions and the things that you're doing, how it really affects your children.
Right.
And children are good with, for the most part, they're good with coping skills, and they're good with maintaining a way of survival and to go on. And for a lot of these kids, just to simply look at them or have a conversation with them, you don't realize the turmoil that's going on inside that child or the pain that child is suffering on the inside. And so a lot of times parents don't realize, because of their actions and the things they're doing, what they're actually doing to their children. And I think through Department of Social Services and law enforcement, we see this a lot, is that it seems to be a cycle that's passed down from generations to generations. And so a lot of these parents that are in situations where their kids are in bad situations and they're in turmoil inside, they don't fully understand that because they were raised in similar I'll get it out in a minute. Similar circumstances. And so that become part of their life and a normalcy in their life. And so they don't realize that the way they're treating their kids and the things they're doing is not normal. And so sometimes it's just like Cindy said, just working with those parents and going through the process to get some counseling, to get some training, to get some skills and some different things to realize that there is a better way, and the way that the things these kids are going through is not a good situation, and there's things that we can do as parents to change those situations with the kids.
It does get a little frustrating when you do see a lot of the parents that have some really bad habits, and they put those habits before the needs of the child. And
Right.
one of the things, when you and I first started doing this radio show, I asked you what are some of the needs here in Cherokee County that would our community can help on, and you said that it was surprising how many kids would eat at school on Friday, and the next meal they eat would be breakfast at school Monday morning.
Right.
And it really is a sad situation knowing that. And so that was a big eye opener for me, that I didn't realize.
And I think people will be really, really shocked and surprised at the amount of kids that are taking on parental roles in their homes, that are middle schoolers, that are even some elementary schoolers, but are middle schoolers and high schoolers, but they're basically raising their little brothers and sisters,
Right.
making sure they get ready for school, making sure they get meals, making sure their paperwork's done and their planners are signed and all those kind of things. I think people will be shocked to realize that the amount of teenagers and young folks that we have in Cherokee County that's taking on this parental roles.
So they're having to grow up really fast.
Right. Yeah, just to make sure their little brothers and sisters are taken care of.
So for foster parents, what kind of people are you looking for? What kind of people make the best foster parents, or how can they get involved?
Just about anybody that loves kids can be foster parents. Basically, what those children need is just somebody who is going to care for them and love them until their parents, the child's parents, can get back on their feet. They work with social workers to access certain resources and things that can correct the situations in their lives. But the foster parents, they have to be at least 21 years old. They have to have a stable home and a stable income. You don't want the people who are just there for the money,
Right.
because we don't have people in their homes all the time, so that's not a good source of income. They have to be fingerprinted, and they have to have criminal records checks. No addictions to alcohol or illegal substances. We have a training program that they have to complete, and they have to be licensed by the state of North Carolina. So our licensing worker collects all the information from them, and submits it to North Carolina, and then they go over the records with fine-tooth combs and make sure everything is in place and appropriate.
That makes sense, because you don't want to place that child in a home that's worse than where he or she is coming from.
Right. We are going to have a training session coming up soon. It's 30 hours of training, and we're going to do an information session on January 11th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Cherokee County Department of Social Services. So if you're interested, we would love to have you come. We will have some question and answers. It will be a very informal thing. We will have some current foster parents there, so that you would be able to ask them questions and find out about their experience with the system. And then the actual training will begin on January 16th, and it's held 2 nights a week. I think it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Don't hold me to that. You can find out more at the information session on January 11th. We would love to have people come out. If you are not able to do it yourself, perhaps you know someone who is. We could really use some good.
So in the meantime, who could people call if they're interested in it?
Roseanne Hanford is our licensing worker. She does recruitment and licensing, and keeps up with them after the initial license. Her extension is 203, so 837-7455, extension 203.
How great is the need here in Cherokee County for foster care? Can you reveal any numbers, like how many kids are currently in foster care right now?
We currently have 59.
59 kids? And wow, that's more than I imagined.
And that's actually down from what it has been.
Wow.
We, at one point, were up to about 80. So we are down a little bit from.
What's the average time that a kid spends in foster care?
Oh gosh, I didn't bring that with me. It really varies. You know, we do have some that literally are just in care for a few days, and we have some in care, you know, based on the situation for years.
So I guess with the situation where they're in foster care for years, the foster parents can probably get pretty attached to those kids, and
They can.
they love them like their own. And I know there has to be some kind of, if there is a separation after that point, it has to be heartbreaking at some point.
That is the real struggle with foster parents, because you want them to be able to form a connection with those children, because the children need that. They need that bonding. But you also have to understand that we are required by the state to try to reunify the child with their family.
Right.
And so that is our ultimate goal. That's what we have to be working toward. So the foster parents have to be forming that bond, while at the same time knowing that it's only temporary.
Right.
Cindy and I had talked about doing foster parenting after we retire, hopefully here in a few years. but that's one of the things that is a very real discussion that we've had about this whole thing, and we understand where people are coming from and trying to get foster care workers in the field. To me, it's a little bit different. If you took an older child, a teenager, you know, an older middle schooler or something of that nature, and kept them, you know, for a few months or a year, and they went back to their parents. To me, that would be a little bit different than taking a newborn baby and keeping that baby for 3 or 4 years, and then
You're
giving
basically
it to a
raising.
parent. It's basically your child, you know. And so those are all things that it takes a very special and very unique people to be able to do that, and like Cindy said, to form those bonds, but form those bonds appropriately,
Right.
and be okay when it's time to break those bonds. It may not be a pleasant experience, it may not be a happy experience, but it's an experience that may be necessary, and so it takes a strong person to be able to break those bonds. But like you say, I think that you kind of have some type of leeway of picking and choosing, don't you, as to what kids you're going to take or not take.
Yes.
So you're not obligated to take a newborn, for example, and keep it a year or two. If you would rather have a teenager or would rather have an older child, that's a decision that you can make. Is that
It
correct?
is. Yes. A lot of people who have children in their home don't want any foster children that are older than their children. So they may want, preschool children.
Right.
Simply because children learn a lot of times what they've been living in, and they don't necessarily want those children teaching their own children
Right.
some of those bad things. So we do allow people to, give us a range of children that they would be interested in fostering. The financial aspect of it, any children who are brought into custody are automatically eligible for Medicaid. So medical expenses would be covered. We do have a payment that we make to foster children or foster parents based on the number of children they have in their home. So the payment ranges from $475 a month to $634 a month based on the age of the child. And then
that money is to take care of the child. That's
It
not
is.
income for the foster parent.
correct. It's all basically room and board, clothing and that sort of thing, food. It's to cover those expenses.
And does those type of income, I call it income, but those kind of payments that go to those foster families, that's for like incidental things that happen at school and different fees and different things the school may require of kids, or buying books or whatever it may be for their education. So like you say, they're not, people don't get into this or should not get into this to try to find an income or addition to supplement their income. Those monies that are paid is to take care of those children and those incidental things that come that your medical bills may not pay, or other things that may come with that. So buying clothes for kids for school and those kind of stuff,
And we do have another account that we can use if it's something that's above and beyond what are considered normal living expenses. So we do fundraisers from time to time to supplement that, to help buy winter coats, or if there's a camp that the child wants to go to, or basketball shoes, those sorts of things that are kind of above and beyond. Sometimes we can help with those
So-
outside of that.
So one question I have is, what happens to those kids that are not able to reunify with their parents? If you take a foster kid in and that child's not able to reunify with the parents for criminal reasons or whatever it may be, or found that home is unsafe, they're not doing what they should do, what happens to those children?
Then we would look to adopt them, or we could do guardianship, with a family member or someone else. But those foster parents would then have the option to adopt that child if that came to be.
So that is a possibility.
It is a possibility, yes.
Okay, circling back around to the first part of our show, what kind of kid or child, age range, their living status, what kind of kid would qualify to be a foster kid? Say they were not brought in by the sheriff's office, but they know that they're living in bad conditions. How do they get into the program without it being a legal issue?
We get reports. Everybody in North Carolina is a mandated reporter. So if anyone knows of a child who is being abused, neglected, or has been abandoned, is obligated by the law to report that to the Department of Social Services in whatever county they happen to be in. So we receive reports on a daily basis. We have a screening process. We screen those reports as to whether we're going to accept it for investigation. And we have very strict guidelines set forth by the state around screening reports. You have to meet certain criteria in order to meet the report, or for the report to be accepted. So once we receive the report, then we send a worker out there to investigate it. And if they get out there, and most of the time law enforcement is not involved. Most of the time, unless there's some safety concern, the social worker goes out by themselves. They go out and they collect information. They talk about the allegations that were made in the report and determine whether or not the child is safe. If the child is not found to be safe where they are, we'll of course have a conversation with the family to see if there's other family members who are able to step in and help them at that point until they can correct the issues. If not, then we have to contact a judge, and we have to explain to the judge what those safety factors are that make the child not safe in their current home.
Can the parent that you're investigating deny you access to the home?
They cannot.
Okay, very good. So, for example, so what if I were to become a foster parent myself? What would I expect from DSS? Routine checks to make sure that things are up and above?
Yes.
On par?
We do annual relicensing. So Roseanne Hanford is also the one who does the relicensing. She does routine home visits just to make sure everything's still where it needs to be. We don't do a white glove test. Everything doesn't have to be spotless.
Right.
There just basically has to be no safety concerns. You can't have broken glass. You can't have water running close by your property. If you live beside like a creek, then you have to have a fence up
Right.
so that the child doesn't have free access to that water. So there are different aspects that we have to cover.
The safety things like no.
And all that's part of that
chemicals.
training. As people come, they learn whether they, if this is something they want to do or not do, because it's all part of that training. It's what's required.
All right. So when someone decides to be a foster parent, what's their next step right now? Go to this meeting, contact DSS by phone?
Yes. You can call Roseanne if you have initial questions. She will be happy to answer those for you. We would love for you to show up on January 11th for the orientation, speak to the current foster parents and get an idea of what their experience has been. Again, I said,
And if you're not really sure,
informal.
if you're just kind of on the fence, think you might still come to that January 11th and talk to people, and that might help you form a decision whether this is something you want to do or not do.
And I think we have a lot of folks out there listening and watching on Facebook right now, or maybe watching later. If you know of somebody who has that love in their heart and who wants to give back to the community, give back to kids who are in need, feel free to share this Facebook video with your friends on your timeline. It could very well save a kid's life, or at least make their life better.
It could.
It could. And I know a lot of foster parents of people who's been through this, that they may only keep a kid a month or two and they go on and go back with their families. But I know of several that kid still stays in contact with the foster families, and and really a lot of them for the rest of their lives, don't they? And even though they may not have been in their home but a few months, they still make contact with those families and build those bonds that last.
So what exactly, before the foster care program was ever in existence, what happened to the kids before foster care?
Most of the time, either families or churches would step in, and someone, either in the family or in the communities, everybody used to just kind of pitch in and take care of it themselves.
Or the child got neglected at some point, and we hate seeing that happen. We absolutely hate seeing that happen. So, give Cherokee County DSS a call if you're interested in foster care, and we'd love to see this just continue growing for a better outcome for our community.
We want to make sure our kids are safe and taken care of. People talk about the kids are our future community. No, they're our current community. And so we have to take care of those kids and take care of the needs that are out there for them. And, someday, like I've said before, hopefully it's a few years from now, but someday I'm not going to be sheriff anymore. Somebody else is going to be sheriff. She's not going to be the director. Somebody else is going to be director. And somebody else is probably going on WKRK one of these years, many years from now.
Yeah, at least 30 days from now,
at
at least.
at least 30 days. But you got to think about it. Those kids that are around now that are being born today, and those young kids that are around, are those that's going to be taking these jobs, and are the ones that's going to be leading our community. So it's important that we invest in those children today, and that we take care of those kids today, and we do the best by our kids that we can do.
And when you say invest, that's not just financially. That's investing into their future, their education, their well-being, and just so they grow up to want to be something in their lives.
Right.
And
Coping skills. A lot of times, they just need someone to help teach them some coping skills. When bad things happen, how do you react to that? So it's a very important task to be foster parents. So.
All right. I know we probably had a ton of questions that popped up on the screen, but I haven't had a chance to read them. I'm sitting far away from the screen, and I can't see that small print right now. But We'll go back and read those later, but if you have questions, you can always call DSS about the program, and we'll probably be talking about that again in the future. And we would love to have Cindy come back with us.
Anytime.
Thank you.
I know this half hour just flew by, didn't it?
See, I told you to talk more than 5 minutes.
Well, Sheriff, is there anything that you wanted to add that we haven't discussed with the about the sheriff's office?
No, that's fine. We got plenty of time to talk about that. We'll hit that again next week. But like I said before, we just want to make sure it doesn't matter if it's law enforcement, DSS, radio, business people. Mm-hmm. We just all need to invest in our kids and be out there and make sure we take care of them.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. It is WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina. Tim Radford here, and we're going to end our Facebook Live broadcast. Thanks for everyone who tuned in there, and we'll end our Facebook Live feed, and then we'll have Little Brasstown Baptist Church with Pastor Odd Brown coming up in just a moment on the radio on 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Stand by. All right, folks on the radio, we have ended our Facebook Live feed, and we'll take a break real quick and then come back with more right here on WKRK.
Registration for the spring semester is going on now.